Hello and welcome to another lighting diagram video. My name is Hoshiko, and today we are talking about the print collector. No, not the one I did recently, a different one. But this one is the print collector by Honore Daumier. Now, one reason I chose this was because it's really fun to have an almost identical subject matter for two different paintings, where we can see a lot of differences and similarities to how the subject is captured. And within those, see how different artists interpret similar or the same scenes to tell the story of the subject. In this case, like the other one, we see portfolios and prints all around, and the person is engaged with them. Before we get started, I want to say that if you want my free filmmaker template for Draw.io, you can head over to my Patreon. The link is down in the video's description. The template is completely free and gives you all of the tools that are at the top of the screen for a filmmaking use. While there, you can join for free, or you can join one of my tiers. They start at just $2 and help support the videos on this channel, including the diagrams and my regular cinematography videos. If you want to know how to get your own reference image in and set up the template, I have a guide video also linked down in the video's description. But without any more waiting, let's take a look at this painting. So first off, I really like this kind of loose, almost abstract style, especially for the paintings in the background. This actually contrasts with my love of paintings that have other paintings inside of them. I always think that's an incredibly fun thing. For example, I really love Vermeer's work, and he has a lot of other paintings in his paintings, usually in the background behind our subjects, and sometimes they lend to the themes overall. Now, pretty much all of these paintings are quite abstracted, except for this one right here, which to me looks like one of Da Vinci's red chalk drawings. It might be the Redeemer, I'm not quite sure, but that's really the only one that you can actually make a little bit more of the form and shape out of. Now, that may be purposeful that one is more viewable to us as the audience, as that might be more special or more important to the artist or to the subject. I just think it's interesting that that one actually does stand out just a little bit, even though it is still abstract. But with that same style, we can notice that the shadows on the ground are pretty hard lines, but they're not exactly dark. When you look at the jacket, any of the shadows do actually fall into a pretty deep darkness, and we have a little more of a hard line on these shadows than you do on the floor, even though they appear to be from the same source. And that shadow is still then not consistent across all the way, as it breaks up more and is a little more diffused looking on the right side of the subject or the left side of our frame as it falls across the table with the prints on it. I think that this is some artistic interpretation of the shadow, and it really emphasizes our subject with these harder, darker lines and a little bit of an outline versus the background having a lot more ambiguity in its form and the lines not being as crisp. And this also means that the shadow that's falling across the table isn't so blacked out and hard that it distracts from the prints. So we're looking at these shadows in particular and seeing how they actually all kind of vary. So then for us, we're using a photographic medium and not being able to have these same types of artistic interpretation, we need to be able to pick which one we want most. And I'm going to go for a middle ground, actually. I'm going to go for this look, which would be somewhere between the shadows that fall in the jacket and the more diffuse shadow that's here on the ground. And then the last thing I want to notice is that up here we have kind of an angle of the light that comes across diagonally. So we kind of see this almost as a window light that's coming across and going across the floor. A window that might be at the front of a shop or such, it is coming pretty much straight across while still illuminating the floor. So let's just build out the room here. I'm going to use the built-in floor plan tools from Draw.io. These make building out diagrams so fast and so easy because you don't have to make all the different walls and all the different furniture. You can just kind of do something like that, and then we're going to get some tables. I'm just going to color those so they're a little bit different from the rest of the world around it that we're building. Okay, and we need our actor, and the actor is going to be standing right here. We're going to bring him to the front, and I have obviously the tables be sent to the back. Now we are pretty tight in the corner here. This table extends out, but really we're just kind of mostly right in this area. And this camera we are having it so that the edge of the frame, so the corner of the room is towards the edge of the frame, kind of on the, almost a sixth, but we are looking into the corner of the room. So we're not exactly 45 degrees, but we're pretty close, somewhere along this line. And that way we get the corner on the edge of the frame, but we can still maintain a pretty close look. There is a little bit of compression around in the space. He does kind of look like he's right next to the wall. All the paintings are surrounding him really clearly. So I would say that we're, you know, in a normal 2 telephoto range, but not anything incredibly telephoto, just kind of telephoto enough to get a little bit of compression, very much closer to the normal side, but definitely not, in my opinion, wide angle, because that would push these paintings further back and change the look of how they are all surrounding this person who loves collecting prints. And with that, we can place our first light. Now I'm gonna say, what if you got this as an actual like little shop that you came in and were able to film in? That would be awesome. Kind of an indie filmmaker's dream, right? Is that you've got somebody to agree to let you use their space as your location. You don't have to have a stage, you don't have to have a set, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. But now we are on a set and we have to figure out how to actually make this work. So what I was doing was I was imagining that this is probably a big window here, but there's a door. It's not the biggest window because it doesn't reach all the way over into the side here, and the light's coming pretty straight in. That's why I have a little bit of wall right there, which, you know, it's pretty normal for most buildings, but let's just pretend we have a door that opens on this side, and probably, you know, should make that actually kind of scale. So we have a door that opens right there, and then we have a window, something like that. Now I do want to be realistic that we might have more windows in a shop like this. So let's put one over here and we can have some fun with this. So I think that's a pretty good description of how this scene looks overall. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is that we have a little bit of exposure on the side of his face that's different than the rest of the exposure. His face is turning towards the wall and kind of in particular towards this painting that might be the Da Vinci, and we are getting a little bit of exposure. So we want to make sure that we're having some lightness there. The rest of his body is getting most of the light that's coming from the right of our frame, and the jacket where his hand is in the pocket pushing it forward is blocking out his chest. And so you see this line of the shadow is not exactly parallel to the wall back here. So I think that the light comes ever so slightly towards the left of frame. So we're going to take a lamp, and let's say, like we said, this is going to be a location that you've been able to rent for a film. So we're going to go all out, and we're going to light through a window for this first kind of iteration of this, which is really fun and awesome. And we love being able to do that because it makes us able to have much more of like a full 360-degree look for our camera movement inside the shop. You could have the camera start facing on this wall as he comes in and goes all the way to the back and peruses the paintings. And then we end up, and this could be our kind of our key frame in the shot, but of him walking in. And we can do that because we have our lighting set up outside instead of inside. Now, you could easily move this forward and shoot just like this and still have it be motivated by this window. You could even have light coming in from the actual sun in this window, and then you are augmenting and changing it and shaping it to use for your story by having your light in front of the window. That's always possible as well. But for our purposes right now, we are going to be lighting from outside. And currently how I have it, and the line is more or less parallel to the wall, but just angled ever so slightly. I could probably push it actually a little further, kind of like this. And that gets us just a little off angle to the wall, but that light goes all the way through. Now, I would say that this is actually a pretty hard light, and that is because we do have the details of the jacket all pretty much blacked out with more contrasty sharp shadows. This one is a pretty sharp shadow, even if it's lightened. This is the only one that's a little bit different. Now we're going to work on this in just a second. So we could bring this out here and have it casting in just the lamp itself. We could put a Fresnel on it, and that would give us a little more focus, but that might make the light a little bit more hard and make those shadows sharper. But you could also use the flood and spot to dial in kind of an exact amount of sharpness that you want while making sure that it's really powerful. I do like Fresnels for replicating sunlight, so I will put a Fresnel there. Now, if you don't have the same budget for using a Fresnel, if you have a Bowens mount light, you could just use a hood. Now, the hood will create a double shadow effect, but I find that that's relatively okay when shooting it through windows, because lots of windows with multiple panes can create double shadows themselves. So it will look less unnatural than if you were just in a completely interior scene. So those are kind of two ways you could do it. Now, that being said, you could also, depending on exactly the look you want, put some diffusion really way back here with that light. This could be as simple as using tracing paper on the hood that I was just talking about, or you could have a C-stand with a silk on it. The light is now really pretty far away from our subject, and because of the distance, the light will be harder even if we put diffusion on it, but it will soften that shadow just a little bit. So you kind of have two options here. You could use the distance and a little bit of diffusion to make it kind of the middle ground between having the shadows be diffused and having the shadows be sharp, or you could use a Fresnel and you could have harder shadows but be able to have the control of manipulation through the flood or the spot. And when you're doing that, the edge of the actual wall will help you create the shadow right here and the actual shape of it along the wall here. Now, if you were inside, you would need to use some flags on the side and across the top to help create that shape to simulate that window look. But because we're using the window and our light is on the outside, maybe we are augmenting the sun in this case, we are going to be able to get that shape of that window frame. I would say angle this down a little bit so that we make sure that it goes across the floor as well. Now, I did say that I wanted to have some fun with this other window because yes, we do have a little bit of light falling onto his face. We do have some lighter tones and less deep shadows in these areas right here. And we do get to see back into the back corner despite our first light not really falling there. And we have this window. But this window is right behind where our camera is, and I don't want to just simply flatten out the image. I want to add a little bit of fill, but without having any sort of maybe shadow from the camera side or just flattened light from it being in line with the camera. And I don't want it to be really competitive against this light that we've taken our time to set up here. So I'm actually going to black out this window. We're going to take a WAG flag and we're going to put it right in front of that. Now, if you want a super budget version of that, you can do black trash bags. Take two of them, put them together, gaff tape them to the wall, and just seal it off with the black trash bags. That is the lowest budget blackout that you can get. A little bit more money is using a moving blanket. A little bit more money is using a big piece of duvetine. And a little bit more money is using a WAG flag or a 4x4 floppy. A WAG flag is a really great option here because it's super easy, super flexible, and just, quick to set up and take down. Trash bags will take a little more time, take a little more energy, but those will be a lot cheaper because it's the cost of a roll of black trash bags and some gaff tape. Now make sure to use gaff tape, not duct tape. You don't want to be pulling people's paint off their walls or anything like that. And generally, don't put tape onto windows. It can pull off protective and privacy coatings that the windows have. So just be really careful of that. But now with that blocked out, we can do whatever we want inside here to simulate this window. Because maybe we actually have another scene where the camera follows all the way around and he gets something, and then we cut to facing the same direction that he's facing as he talks to a cashier over here. We'll just say there is a cashier right there, and we will have it end up having a part where they are looking at each other like this, and there is the camera is facing them like this. Now we might see some of that window. Well, what are we going to do? Because we've blocked out this window in this scene, we're going to light this direction, and then when we get over to this window, we're going to take away that WAG flag, and we're going to use that window as its own kind of practical, essentially. But that all doesn't fit within this painting. I'm just having some fun. So basically now our goal is to make it so that we can see into the back right here, make it so that his shadow is lightened against the actual pictures, and make sure that we get a little bit of light onto his face. So I'm going to take a big diffusion sheet. Now, this could be several different things. It could be a 6x6. It could be smaller. It could be a 4x4. I don't think a 12x12 would fit in this room really comfortably. But if you want a budget version, you can use a 5-in-1 reflector. The core inside of that is a large piece of diffusion. You can get big versions that are like 4x6s or 5x7s and take off the reflector part and use that as a big sheet of diffusion. That is a budget trick that I love. And we're going to pretend like, yes, this window's over here. We are not using this window. We're going to instead go from more of an angle that is in line with him, not in line with the camera though in particular. And we're going to have this diffusion like this. And we're going to put our light path down because we want this to be as kind of a wide of a swath of light as possible. Something along those lines. This will then help fill in that shadow. It will fill in his face a little bit. It will fill in the coat just enough. This is such a black material and the light is being blocked by his arm that we will still get this to be pretty black, but it won't be so dense that you can't see into it at all. And you'll make sure that you can get somewhat of a read on the paintings all surrounding him. One reason why I think that this is a really good method to get this to be lightened up and fill in is also just simply that the floor right here underneath has that hard line. We want that hard line that's coming from the window, but also at the same time, we are getting to see into this shadowed area. And right now with this light source, we're seeing into that shadowed area. If you need just a little bit more for his face, you can bring in a bounce. This could be, like I said already, another 5-in-1 reflector. It could be a pizza box. It could be a bounce card. If you want just a little bit more, and you can bring that in just kind of above, right outside of frame right here, and bring up his face as if the light was reflecting off of the wall right next to him. Just kind of back that way. Just something like that. It doesn't need to be anything incredible, but it just creates that little bit of a, and yes, you know it's going to come, light, dark, light, dark, light pattern on his face. You know how much I love that to actually create contrast in your image. And I think that this is actually a great depiction of it because you do have darker, lighter in the painting overall, as well as on the micro on his face. So this is pretty much how you can light this scene. It's not all that gear intensive. You need 2 lamps, some diffusion, and you have a Fresnel as an option. And beyond that, you need a bounce card, which could be as simple as a, pizza box or a 5-in-1 reflector itself set with the white side being used. If you want to black this out, you can use a flag, you can use Duve, you can use a moving blanket, you can use black trash bags. And something that also helps with the lighting is if this door is a clear glass door, you obviously don't want to block it. That's a safety hazard. But if there is sunlight coming in, that will just add a little bit more light and exposure to the scene overall. If you want to save just a little bit more money, you could replace this diffusion with either a softbox or an octobox. I like the octobox here because you might get a little bit more of a fall off on the circular edges, but you could do something like that. And that would be still a nice soft source while being a little bit less expensive and a little bit less grip intensive. And that basically wraps us up. Like I said, I really think this was an interesting one because of its similarities and differences to the other print collector one that I've already done by Degas. That's linked down below if you want to see it. How the actual execution of the image is handled is just so interesting to me. And it's also cool because when we talk about this, we're talking about executing it in a different medium even, but once again, a same or similar subject. And with each iteration, we all have our own artistic fingerprints that are going onto the image and how it can be created and how it can be stylized to fit not only the story we're having, but also how we are viewing the world as artists. Like I said at the beginning, if you want to get my filmmaker template tools that are up here at the top, you can head over to my Patreon, patreon.com/TrentonHoshiko. template is completely free. You can also join me over there to get notifications when I post new videos, or you can become a member. Tier start just $2 and really help support this channel. If you want to pick up any of the equipment that I've talked about today for how to light a scene like this, you can find affiliate links in the video's description down below. I am a GVM affiliate, and if you want to, you can use my promotional code down below to save 10% on any orders for lights or equipment from them. And if you liked the video overall, please give it a like down below. It really helps me in reaching new audiences who like this type of lighting diagram video. And you can subscribe for upcoming videos about tools and techniques for lighting, cinematography, and micro-budget filmmaking in general. I really appreciate the time that you've spent watching. Thank you so much, and I hope that you have a great day. Take care.